Verdun and Stalingrad. The names themselves just sound heavy, don't they? These weren't just battles. They were, for all intents and purposes, industrial-scale slaughterhouses that completely redefined modern warfare. So today, we're going to dive into why these conflicts became such brutal meat grinders and what they can still teach us about the battlefields of today and tomorrow. So that's the big question, right? Why do some battles just devolve into these horrific, legendary meat grinders? Well, you can't find better, or frankly more terrifying examples than Verdun and Stalingrad. These are the places where the goal stopped being about capturing ground, and it became about something way more brutal, just bleeding the other guy dry, one soldier, one bullet, one shell at a time. And how does this even happen? Well, it often starts with something I like to call the tactical temptation. It's this obsession with capturing one small hill, a single fort, or maybe one specific building. And that obsession, it can absolutely destroy an army's momentum and lead to total strategic disaster. Now, what's really interesting is the difference in intent here. At Verdun, the German plan was literally attrition from day one. The whole point was to bleed France white over a fortress that was more symbolic than anything. But at Stalingrad, the initial goal was much cleaner, a strategic capture of a key city. It was a target, not just bait. And yet, both battles ended up in the exact same catastrophic grinding place. And this is exactly how they got bogged down. Look at this. At Verdun, you had entire divisions just shattered to pieces fighting for a single concrete fort. Fast forward to Stalingrad, and the fight wasn't even for the city anymore. It was for the tractor factory, or Mame of Kurgan Hill, or famously, a single apartment building known as Pavlov's house. This kind of tunnel vision just completely crippled their entire campaign. But it wasn't just the enemy soldiers they were fighting. In both of these battles, the environment itself, the weather, the mud, the cold, became a relentless and absolutely lethal enemy. Just look at this number, -30 degrees Celsius. That was the reality for the German 6th Army at Stalingrad. And let's be clear, this isn't just cold weather. This is a weapon. When you don't have proper shelter or supplies, the Russian winter itself becomes one of the primary destroyers of your army. And this quote just captures the sheer misery of it all. At Verdun, the battlefield was a sea of freezing mud, so deep that you could literally drown in a water-filled shell crater. At Stalingrad, it was that brutal, unforgiving cold. But the key problem, the common thread here, was the lack of real shelter. These soldiers were trapped in open fields and shallow trenches, just completely exposed to the elements. And here's where you see a critical difference. At Verdun, the mud was a horrific obstacle, for sure. It slowed everything to a crawl. But at Stalingrad, the winter became a catastrophic weapon. Once that army was encircled, their supplies and winter gear were completely cut off. That's what turned miserable conditions into an absolute death sentence for tens of thousands. Now, of course, the fight wasn't just happening on the frozen ground or in the mud. The battle for the skies was absolutely pivotal, but it played out in dramatically different ways in each conflict. It really shows you just how much air power evolved in only a couple of decades. So at Verdun, Germany kicked things off with total air superiority. Their Luftsperre, or air blockade, basically blinded the French artillery spotters on the ground. But, and this is a big but, the advantage was short-lived. The French adapted, they massed their fighter planes, and they aggressively retook the skies. In the end, air power was important, yeah, but it wasn't the single decisive factor. Stalingrad, though, that is a whole different story. It's a textbook case of catastrophic failure. With the 6th Army trapped, the Luftwaffe made this fatal promise. Don't worry, we'll supply you entirely from the air. The reality was an absolute nightmare. Soviet fighters, heavy anti-aircraft guns, and blinding snowstorms just decimated the transport fleet. The airlift completely collapsed, and this over-reliance on air power, it sealed the Army's fate. Okay, so why are we digging up these old battles now? What does this have to do with today? Well, it turns out the core lessons about exposure, about shelter, and about attrition are more than just relevant. They're shockingly critical on the modern battlefield. The massive game changer today, the thing that connects Verdun and Stalingrad to the 21st century, is this concept right here: persistent surveillance. Thanks to a sky full of satellites and, maybe more importantly, cheap swarming drones, the modern battlefield is becoming transparent. There was almost nowhere left to hide. And what that does is it makes the type of ground you're fighting on more important than ever. Out in open country, that constant surveillance creates what's essentially a transparent kill zone.
Any movement can be spotted and targeted almost instantly. But cities? Cities are different. All those buildings, the rubble, the tunnels, they degrade surveillance and offer vital concealment. And we're literally seeing this play out right now. In Ukraine, holding a strategic city like Avdiivka gives you a massive tactical advantage. It offers shelter from the all-seeing eye of drones, and it acts as a defensible hub for logistics. Being stuck in an exposed position in some small village, on the other hand, that's a death trap. I mean, this chart just lays it all out, doesn't it? The difference in vulnerability is just stark. Out in open terrain, a soldier is a sitting duck. But urban shelter, it dramatically reduces that risk. In the age of the drone, the city itself has become a kind of modern-day fortress, blunting the effectiveness of this powerful new technology.
Which really leaves us with this one critical question for the future of warfare. If a single soldier in an open field is now visible from miles away, day or night, has the dense, complex, messy city become the last true fortress on Earth? Thanks for digging into this with me.